Phobias and anxiety disorders can commonly go hand in hand, affecting children and adults. Whether it's fear of heights, animals, clowns, even going outside, these issues can affect your life in a drastic fashion.
Yeah, Cliff and I had the chance to speak with Dr. Jessica Britt Thomas, who is Director of Integrated Behavioral Health in the Department of Family and Community Medicine at MCG Wellstar. Take a look.
Dr. Thomas, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. It's a big subject that a lot of people have association with, phobias here. So what are specific phobias that we're talking about?
Specific phobias is having an intense fear during an encounter of either an object, a thing, or an environment. They're fairly common, right? About 8% of women, 3% of male adults experience some form of a fear. They typically start in childhood. And what we know is we have some common ones, right? So you've all heard of different fears, but there are some that tend to be the most common. So fear of animals, fear of heights, fear of weather, so thunderstorms and lightning, and then your blood, injury, and illnesses type of phobias that we experience.
And how do you diagnose a specific phobia?
Yeah, so when someone's coming in to a provider, we're looking at a variety of things. The first thing is the duration, so having that prevalence for at least 6 months or more. We also look at the reaction, so it's usually immediately, anxious right when an encounter occurs, and that response is very much blown out of proportion to the perceived threat, right? It's not as realistic as what you're actually encountering. And then very, very important, there's an act of avoiding, right? You're deliberately avoiding that particular object or environment to the point where it's causing significant distress on your daily life.
Let's talk about the differences between, say, a normal fear versus a phobia that you have, and that time when you actually think, oh, hey, I actually need to get checked out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question because we all have fears, and we should have a normal reaction to a dangerous threat or environment. But when that becomes to the point where you are altering your entire life, changing things, missing out on things, right? So having a fear of heights is one thing, but avoiding taking a job because it's on the 10th floor, and it's a really good job opportunity. That's an example of where a phobia becomes more of a problem. Being afraid of needles in blood, right? Feeling a little queasy at doctor's offices, that's okay. But avoiding making those appointments, never having those annual checkups, never going to have that surgery that you've been needing, that's more problematic. And that's where we start to define normal fear versus phobia.
Okay. And what are some treatments for specific phobias?
So the most common treatment that we really know and that's been kind of heavily researched and backed is exposure therapy. So that's working with a specialist where you're developing a plan of action. So for instance, a fear of dogs, you want to be able to interact with dogs without having, panic attacks. So you're working towards that. Maybe you're initially talking about dogs, thinking about dogs, maybe you're watching movies around dogs, and then maybe you're starting to interact or be in the same vicinity at arm's reach. So it's a process and it's done at your own pace. You're not just thrown in the deep end, right? Cognitive behavioral therapy is another one that's really more looking at our thoughts and how our thoughts are impacted by these particular fears. Relaxation skills and breathing exercises are something that you're always going to have to do whenever you're interacting with things that make you a little uncomfortable. And then we have medications. So benzodiazepines and beta blockers are often used for those that are trying to, they can't avoid, basically you can't avoid the situation at all.
You have to do it.
You have to do it. You have to fly. I'm going to take some medicine before I fly, feel a little bit more calm and relaxed. That's kind of the medication management.
Let's talk about the children that have phobias. How do you cope with the kids that have these irrational fears?
Yeah, so again, a lot of the times it starts during childhood and as young as 7, right? So you as a parent have a lot of opportunities to model different behaviors, right? So if you have a fear, talking to your child about how you manage your fear. So using the example of the needles, take your child with you to your annual checkup. Show them, let them see you getting that shot and working through those own fears. Talking about it, being very open, not minimizing your child's experience, not making them feel bad or feel like their fear is unrational. And then not reinforcing that specific phobia. So if your child has a fear of dogs, never having them around animals or never talking about that or having that exposure therapy as we were talking about, you don't want to do that. That kind of is counterproductive.
Okay, I heard this some time ago, and I'll never forget that fear is something that you teach, so maybe the kids can learn that from you.
Yeah.
So now with my kids, I want them to be brave, but at the same time, I want to show them
things that might be dangerous for them, or like if they want to climb something, I want them to be brave, but at the same time, I want them to be aware of the dangers. So how do we find that balance?
It's tough. Kids are fearless for the most part. We're not talking about the ones who have a phobia. There's a lot of things that you don't think ahead of times, right? That's the prefrontal lobe that has to develop with age. I recommend maybe just, cautioning them of just being mindful of the particular threats, but allowing them to experience that. We have to kind of experience that in order to figure out, hey, the stove is hot, right? If I touch it once, I'm probably not going to touch it again. So there's some things that have to be learned on their own, but I think cautioning them and giving them some of those insights that they may not have could be very helpful.
I was a lot more fearless when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's for sure. Me too.
Where are some good resources to find some more information on this, Dr. Thomas?
Yeah, sure. The Mayo Clinic has really good resources. If we're talking specifically about children, the Child's National Hospital also has great resources. Psych Central, Up to Date. These are all great websites that you can go to find more information and also find resources in terms of treatments.
All right, and you'll also find those links on our webpage at Mix It 3 on WRDW.com. Dr. Thomas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.